Hey everyone. Okay, so say this right from the jump. The first 5 minutes of this episode were probably the most euphoric I felt watching a One Piece episode. Not only seeing the backstory transition from Kuma's father telling him about Nika, and then Kuma passing on the torch, doing the same thing for Bonnie, but also seeing the giant warrior parts just absolutely go ballistic, wrecking the Marines, not giving them an inch. Like there was something about that specifically that gave me this feeling of this just feels right and everything's gonna work out. And I think a lot of that is helped by just seeing Dory and Bragi again, like seeing them take command and lead the charge against the Marines, seeing these two giants from so long ago that the Straws befriended and that are now back to help the Straw Hats. Like it's kind of the perfect kind of like payoff and full circle moment of like, yeah, the Straw Hats helped Dorian Broggy all those years ago, and now they're helping the Straw Hats back. Also, I love the explanation for why they're even here. Once again, big news. Morgan's coming in clutch, giving the Straw Hats one hell of a helping hand, whether intentionally or not. Like you gotta hand it to Morgan's. Like I don't know how the man does it, but he's the perfect kind of chaotic for this series. Now, admittedly, if I did have maybe one gripe with this episode, right out of the gate, it's that I'm always on the fence of how I feel about these flashbacks to remind us of who a character is and what the backstory is behind them. And in this case, I didn't hate it, but it did feel a little unnecessary since it's fair to say we saw the Giants fairly recently. Like everyone knows who they are. But okay, let's talk about the big thing to happen in this episode, which is that Katarina Devon and Van Augur arrive on Egghead Island, pretty much making a declaration of war against the government and the world itself, as they say, which, yeah, pretty bold move considering all we've seen so far, but them just outright confronting one of the five elders saying, yeah, we're kind of declaring war on all y'all motherfuckers, and it's like, hey, pretty bold move. But the one thing that's a real big oh crap from this moment for me is seeing Katarina touch Saturn. Like it's one of those small things where even knowing what I know happens to Saturn in the aftermath of this arc, it's still one of those big moments that begs the question of what Blackbeard plans to do now that Katarina can imitate his appearance. Then we get and then of course we get to the point of Caribou, where Caribou shows up and barters with them to join the Blackbeard Pirates. Now, you don't need to watch the next episode to know where this is going. He's going to use the information he's gathered while tailing the Straw Hats, but more specifically telling them he knows about the ancient weapon referring to Shirahoshi. And yeah, this is one of those things where, for me at least, you kind of start to see Charlotte's doomsday prediction kind of take shape a bit, and how it may not it's one of those things where it may not directly be because of Luffy that Fisherman Island gets destroyed or put into harm's way, but it is because of the actions he's taken and how he has indirectly, I guess you could say, influenced events around him that something like this is even possible. Like if he had, like, again, I don't want to put so much on Luffy for making this mistake, but it is true that if he had just properly dealt with Caribou, then there's at least that small chance he wouldn't have learned all he has now. And granted, again, it's not entirely Luffy's fault to be sure, because he couldn't have known, but it is in a way that lack of precaution, I think that led to this moment at all, that allowed Caribou to gather all the information he has from tailing the Straw Hats, and for him to be in this moment where he could tell Katarina and Van Augur all he knows about the ancient weapons and everything that the Straw Hats have experienced. Also, quick side note, but I do gotta say, knowing what I know now, Saturn saying Teach's bloodline is special had me cracking up, like, and saying, no shit, Saturn, of course you'd say that given who his old man is. Like, again, for any anime only watchers, you're in for a treat, but for manga readers, if you like me, you know. Like it's kind of like we it's kind of insane, really. And once again, I guess outside of that, touching on this feeling of euphoria this episode gave me, I loved seeing Bonnie pour her heart out to Luffy in this episode and show this is a moment she's waited for her entire life to finally feel like she's able to see the person her the person Kuma had talked about, the person who would basically be the embodiment of freedom, and again just seeing all that full circle for her, it was a really great moment. Um, Now, it's just it's just such a good feel good moment and kind of funny when you consider like Bonnie's initial impressions of the Straw Hats were what her initial impressions of the Straw Hats were through her first meeting with Zoro and Sabaody. So yeah, that's kind of a major turnaround when you think about it. But okay, well, it's a small moment. I do appreciate the attempt to actually give us a bit of a tease of like a Sanji versus Kizaru fight with him blocking Kizaru's laser from hitting Bonnie, and yet, funny enough, on the other end of that spectrum, like it's one of those moments where I'm okay with I don't know if this fight's really going to go anywhere, but at least we got a little tease of that. I actually I forgot that was in the manga too, but yeah, and and yet and and so yeah, it's just kind of nice to see like okay, we're developing that a little bit. We're giving the fans a little bit of a tease of what a Sanji versus Kizaru fight might look like, even if it's just a short clash. And and the funny thing is, even though the confrontation between Sanji and Kizaru was very short in this episode, there's kind of a funny thing, which on the other end of that spectrum, the fight that's been going on the longest, Zoro versus Lucci, is the fight I'm kind of growing a little bit bored with now. Like the fight, like it's one of those fights where okay, it started off fun, but now I'm like, okay, can we wrap it up? Like for me, that fight it just kind of needs to end at this point. Like it's again, I'm not gonna say it wasn't a fun fight to begin with, but now it's just like, okay, can we please like wrap this up or something? And truth be told, if I remember correctly, I don't think that ends until like the very end of the until we near the bookend of this arc. And but yeah, but yeah, guys. But outside of that, yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Blue Sky, Analyst Crunchyroll, be sure to notification bell, subscribe button, and just share the around, guys. Dark Knight running, signing off. Later, everyone.